Welcome to the Radical Success Podcast, where we focus on internal transformation to experience external results. I'm your host and coach, Doreen Rainey. Join me each week for insightful messages and powerful interviews to equip you to take bold, courageous, and radical action to live the life you want and deserve. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Radical Podcast. I am Doreen Rainey, your Radical Success Coach, and this is where we focus on defining success for ourselves and getting the guts to go after it. I'm telling you, I've gotten so much feedback from our previous episode, which was titled Silent Dream Killers. And man, if you have not checked that out, you definitely want to make sure you listen to that right after this episode, because today I have got a very special guest that I am thrilled to have on the show today. And I met him probably, it's going on 6 or 7 years now. And we'll talk a little bit more about how our paths crossed. But this man right here, I'm telling you, you're going to want to listen to this episode at least 2 or 3 times. You're going to want to grab some pen and paper and jot down a few notes, because he is going to be dropping some nuggets and dropping some knowledge that is going to help you accelerate success in every area of your life. If you've been a listener of this podcast for any period of time, you know that we constantly talk about who you hang around, who's in your circle, who do you surround yourself with. And this man right here is definitely a part of my circle. Why? Because not only is he motivating and inspiring, but he's curious. He's a knowledge seeker. He's someone who challenges me to stay in the loop about what it takes to be successful, the resources I need to access, the books I need to read. He is someone who always leaves me better than before our encounter. And I believe I do the same for him. And so let me stop messing around with you guys and go ahead and introduce you to our guest today, who is Paul C. Brunson. Paul is a mentor, an entrepreneur, a television host, a columnist, and his goal, his mission, is to help you live your best life. He has such an incredible history in terms of business, in terms of media, the people he works with, the impact he has, and we're going to be talking more about that today. And he's going to also share with you all of the projects that he's involved in and how he's impacting the world. Now, here's the deal. I can almost guarantee that after listening to this conversation today, you are going to want more of Paul. And I've got some good news for you. If you are a part of the Radical Success Inner Circle, you can access additional content from Paul, including other interviews that I've done with him, and you're going to gain even more knowledge about what it takes to be successful. If you're not a member of our Inner Circle, you can jump on over to DoreenRainey.com and click on Inner Circle and get immediate access to my Radical Success Library, which is filled with incredible keynotes and trainings and expert interviews, some of which feature Paul. So please help me welcome my good friend to the Radical Success Podcast, Paul Brunson. Hey, Paul.
DR. It's always good to be with you.
It is always good to catch up with you. You are someone who has many things going on, great things going on. And I'm excited that I get to share you with my podcast community about the work that you do and how you're making an impact globally, not just in the DC area, not just in the United States, but across the world. And so let's just start with where you are right now. So talk about the work that you currently do and why it's important and why you love it.
Wow. Well, I'm going to sound real Jamaican when I say this because I really do have 10 jobs. Like, when people do the joke, like, oh, yeah, you're Jamaican, you have a lot of jobs, but then it's really like 2 or 3 things that you do. No,
Right.
I really have 10 jobs. You know this, Doreen. Uh, and it's crazy. And they do take me all over the world. So right now, let me see if I can remember all of them. Sometimes I miss them. So Doreen, tell me if I miss anything here. I write for USA Today. So I'm a business columnist. I have a column every other Thursday in the newspaper, and then also every week online. And that's a job that I love because I get to spotlight entrepreneurs. And in particular, I like to spotlight Black entrepreneurs on that platform. And then secondly, I host a digital show for USA Today called Uncommon Drive, where I interview at the studio in New York. I interview phenomenal entrepreneurs like Swizz Beatz or Mona Scott or Ted Leonsis, Che Wong, right? So that's number 2. Number 3 is I host a television show in the UK. So I do live now. I live probably maybe it's going to be 6-7 months out of the year in the UK. And it's a very popular show called Celebs Go Dating there. So I host that show there. Next is I have masterminds that I run. So I teach and I do a variety of masterminds, sometimes in person. Like in 2 weeks, I'm going to Barbados to do it in person, but sometimes digitally. So I have probably about 150 to 200 students each year on the mastermind.
Nice.
The next is number 5 is that I'm an author. So I'm working on my second book right now, and it's touching upon success, but in particular, kind of the work that we don't see that entrepreneurs and people who are world-class, what they do behind the scenes to prepare. So that's 5. 6 is I'm doing lots of things in Jamaica, but in particular, I'm building 7 schools in Jamaica. I also have structured a program that allows teachers, because there's a massive surplus of teachers in Jamaica. So those teachers that are in that surplus, the program allows them to teach abroad. So that one has already started. And then we're also looking at building a nursing school in Jamaica. So that's another one. Next is I'm a public speaker. So at least twice a month. And Doreen, I've come out, I've spoken at some of your events, which I've loved.
Yes.
So I speak, at all of those places that invite me to come out. And so that's something that I do. Next is, I think we're up to 8, maybe. I think it's 8 or
8. Yeah. Let's see. Yep.
Is it 8?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. A number 8.
8. Look at that. I'm keeping track of all the jobs. So 8 is I am a consultant. So this is something that I think is something that we can all get into, right? As you become perceived as more of a thought leader in your particular space, companies will come to you and look for your support. So there's a number of companies like Yankee Candle that I consult with. And when they are looking for help on developing a new product or service, they'll round up a bunch of us and we'll come together for a full day and brainstorm out that product and service. And so I do that for about 3 companies right now. So I consult. Next up is something that we all do. I think we're all micro influencers now, where we're, can be compensated to post content. So I will do that from time to time. And then last but not least is I'm a freelancer, so, I will be hired periodically by a company to do talent, to act as talent. So I can be hired to, there's a media company that contacted me yesterday who's running a video series next year. And they're hiring me to basically do voiceover and talent for that video series. And they pay a particular fee and I fly out and I do that. So these are all 10 of my jobs. And I'm so proud.
I was going to say, I think the last time we talked, you were up to like 6 or 7. So you've added a few since our last conversation. And I am excited for everything that you have going on. And I'm sure our listeners are going, okay, how does he do that? How did he get there? And how does he manage it all? So I want to jump back to the beginning. And I came across you online years and years, probably 6, 7 years ago now, when you had written an article about lessons you learned from working for 2 billionaires. And it was from that article that we connected. And as you said, you were at my events and you've spoken, and we've talked and shared and our journeys. And so first of all, for those listening, first of all, tell them who the 2 billionaires were that you worked for and how you positioned yourself to get to that place. And then how did that place position you for where you are now?
All right, this is a good one. Well, the 2 billionaires, Oprah Winfrey is one. It's funny. You don't even have to say Winfrey. Just everybody, Oprah, right?
Or
So
just
Oprah, or just O, yeah, Aunt O, like it's Oprah. And then the second, his name is Enver Yücel. And when I began working for Enver Yücel, at that time he wasn't a billionaire, but he's become a billionaire since. And he owns actually the largest educational, for-profit educational company in the Middle East and Europe. And then on top of it, and actually, Doreen, you and I haven't talked about this in a while, but he's now started acquiring everything. So he owns a basketball team out in Turkey now. He owns a stadium. He's just buying everything. He owns half of Turkey, basically. So those are the 2 billionaires. And how I was able to, I think, get in a position where those 2 would want to hire me is just like real talk, ego aside, is doing good work. For Enver Yücel, he literally recruited me because of him witnessing me simply in a Q&A. So I was on stage, people were asking me questions, and just within, 15, 20 minutes of him seeing me interact, just from that, I was essentially offered a job. I mean, the story is a little bit longer than that, and it did require me to go to Turkey and negotiate and all those things. But it was a quick decision. With Oprah, it's interesting, and this is the first time I've ever thought about this. This is why this is such a good question. Is for her it was immediate too. I was at that time I had launched a matchmaking business here in 2008 in Washington, D.C. And I had a client with the matchmaking business, and the client happened to work for Oprah. And the client was on Oprah's plane. At the same time, Oprah was on the plane talking about a new show that she was going to launch. The client said, "Have you heard about this guy?" Oprah said, "No, pull him up." They pulled my show up on YouTube. I had a series called Modern Day Matchmaker. And within, 3-4 minutes, Oprah was like, bring this guy in to LA. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those where it was a quick decision. But once again, that decision was based on their observation of me, like doing my thing at a high level, right? Of being good. And that's why, I love, we talk about books all the time. There's a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And he talks about this whole premise of you want to identify a skill or a set of skills that you could be so good at, people cannot ignore you. People will recognize you for that talent. And if you could do that, you'll make money, you'll make impact, you'll have autonomy, so that's how I think I got on their radar. And then how I was able to kind of leverage my working with them is just being able to, quite honestly, is working with Oprah and Enver completely reshaped my belief in myself. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting. It's almost sad. Like, we look for so much external validation, and we don't realize like how great we really are and how how great our abilities are and all the potential, all the wonderful things that we could do. But once Oprah and Enver, quote unquote, chose me, I think that was my awakening. And I thought, oh my God, if these people who are at the top of their top of their game, top of their industry, if they see something in me, I must have something, and I hate to kind of say it that way, but that's almost that's truthfully what happened. And
Yeah.
from that, I kind of, I woke up and I realized, wow, I do have skills. I do have abilities, and I just got really serious about perfecting them and honing them.
Well, it's so interesting the way you tell that story, because I want to go back to the first thing you said about doing good work. I get questioned all the time, how did I get this role as a vice president in Steve Harvey's company? And it's so key, and I hope people heard you, and I hope they hear me. It was because someone noticed the work I was already doing well, the work that I was already producing, which made someone take notice and make the connection. And so many times I think people are looking for, what we call the hookup, or looking to think that if I can just get someone's attention, then I'll do the work. Or if I can just get someone to believe in me or invest in me, then I'll do X, Y, and Z. When part of it is getting good at doing what you do, being consistent, and putting it out there in the world for people to actually see.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would even, for one of my 10 jobs, the Uncommon Drive job for USA Today, I get a chance to interview, just phenomenal people. And I just interviewed Kasim Dean, AKA Swizz Beatz.
Yes.
And one of the things that he said blew my mind is he said that he only approaches a product or a project with the mindset of, can I make history doing this? And when he said that, it just really hit me, because if you think about, you're only going to do projects that you believe you could make history at. And so therefore, when you're doing that project, you're going to make history doing it. So you're going to do that project in a way, and you're going to make it impact the world like it's never been done before, right? In an unprecedented way.
Right.
If you walked into every project like that, two things would happen. One is you would take fewer projects, because you would have to focus your resources, your time, your energy into a select number. And then two, you would crush the projects, right? You would dominate the project would make history. But then just think what you just said, Doreen. If you're doing these projects, you're doing this good work, and you're putting out into the world will recognize you for it. That's the world that we live in. It will recognize you for it. And so I completely agree.
Yes. And you've had, powerful conversations on that interview series. And just in terms of the people you've come in contact with on your road to all of these different jobs, what is it that you've observed or you've experienced that gives you insight into some key traits about what it takes to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably my favorite topic. Mm-hmm. So can we talk about this for 8 hours?
I love this topic as well. I mean, right, let's just go.
Let's go. Tell everybody right now, take a break.
Right.
Get into something comfortable, come back with, something to drink, because this is all right. So this is a great topic. I will say this, just like right off the break, is that success leaves clues.
Yes.
And when you look at success, I think it's very important to realize that there's different levels of success. And one thing that we can't get caught up in, that most of us, I believe, do, is we get caught up in what I call pseudo success, fake success. We are mesmerized by people posting on the gram that, in front of a car, or in a particular city, or with a group of friends, or wearing something. And we kind of get caught up in that as an idea of success, material success. One of my favorite, I'm Jamaican. I think Bob Marley is a king, like literally. And in one of my favorite interviews of Bob Marley, the interviewer said, "Are you a rich man?" And Bob Marley said, "Well, what does it mean to be a rich man?" And the interviewer said, well, do you have a lot of possessions? Do you have a lot of money? And Bob Marley said, if that's how you judge a rich man, then I'm not a rich man, right? But for me, it's about life and impact, right? That was what Bob Marley said success was, and being rich is impact. So I bring that up because we first have to define what is it to be successful and to really be able to glean, okay, once we know what it is to me to be successful, which is relative, everyone's going to, look at success differently. Then you could go about looking at, okay, what are those people who are successful as you define it? What is it that they do? But I will say this, there are some commonalities across the board, no matter how you define success. I'll give just maybe three.
Okay.
One is that they all are students of their craft or their profession. They are constantly honing what it is that they do. Like just the other day, I stumbled on Q-Tip, from Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah.
I stumbled on his IG, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. Let me see what Q-Tip, he's been doing this since the 90s. What is he doing right now? His last several posts, it's him in the studio. He's still in the studio behind the board, still honing his craft. It's like whatever it is, whatever profession, whoever it may be, the Ted Leonsis, like I said, who is multi-billionaire, running this huge entertainment company out of DC. He owns basketball teams, hockey teams, etc. He still is a salesperson. He still reads books on how to become a better salesperson. Right? He's already the genius at this, but he's still perfecting his skill.
Right.
Whatever craft it is, these folks that are uber successful, they're always students of the game. So that's one, is you have to be a student.
But the thing about being a student is people have to get it out of the I know I need to do that and make it a priority to do that. These are some of the most busiest people you will come across. You, Paul, are a very busy person. I'm a very busy person. But when you understand how important it is to always be learning, to honing your craft, when you understand that that is a lifetime commitment for success, you then prioritize it and make the time for it. Because sometimes I come across people who know it, they need to do that, but they've put so many other things in front of that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You have to prioritize. It needs to be. And here's the thing is, if you, and this is not to throw shade on anybody listening to this, but if you continually put yourself in a position where you try to prioritize it and it just doesn't become priority to you, then maybe becoming the top of your field is not for you. Right. It's one of those where if you've tried a million ways to prioritize it and you just can't focus on, being that student, maybe it's not for you. Not everything is going to be for you in life. Right. But number two, and this I think helps with number one, and why I love you so much, Doreen, is folks who are out here ridiculously successful, their crew is also successful. Their crew is not about mediocrity. Right. A matter of fact, those people who are about mediocrity in their crew, they get axed or they talk too less. You will find that as you become more successful, that you are going to surround yourself with people who are more successful. And it's not about you losing touch with who you are or losing touch with the block or the neighborhood or anything along those lines. It's just simply that when you surround yourself with people who are great and outstanding, what it does is it levels you up. Right. And it basically puts you in a position to be greater and more outstanding. And I always say, this is I used to write about this when I worked for Oprah. And I used to say, think about this. Think about if your 5 closest friends, so the people who you spent the most time with, were all Oprah.
Right.
Think about that. Think about that. Really, your 5 closest friends they're all Oprah 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Think about the conversations you would have. Think about how when you brought up an excuse, how she would call you on it. Think about how, when, you would feel like, wow, I need to be doing a little bit more because look, she's just closing these $5 billion deals, like it's
Right.
how you would just be motivated, inspired, but nurtured and comforted at the same time. And so you have to continue to seek people who are not pseudo successful, not faking it, but who are out here actually ambitious and have a track record of success. That's.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, please. But yeah, I think that's important. And that's, once again, that's why I enjoy Doreen anytime we connect, because I know you're out here getting it, and if you're not getting it, you're trying to get it. Like you're in the midst of getting it.
Right.
That's important. It's really important.
And I think it's also important to remember that when you make this mindset shift, right? Because this podcast is all about knowing that you have to have an internal transformation, a mindset shift to really create external results. And when you decide that you want your circle to be those 5 Oprahs, what will happen is you'll become really frustrated with your current circle. And not because it's their fault, it's because the conversations that you want to have, the planning that you want to do, the strategic moves you want to make, they just can't participate in that.
Right.
And it's not against them. And sometimes they may think that, oh, she thinks she all that, or, oh, we're not good enough for you anymore. But you really have to be courageous enough to let them be, for your own sanity and for your own success, and begin to merge yourself into another circle where you can be challenged and where you can be not just encouraged and motivated, but helped and being strategic and moves and making moves. It's so critical. And sometimes we hesitate because we don't want people to think that we think we're better than them, or we don't want people to think that we look down on them or they're not ambitious enough, but we've got to be willing to do it.
There you go. And, if I could just piggyback on that, I just thought of an example to make it like real plain and simple for everybody. Doreen, whenever you and I are together, we always exchange books or resources, you'll say, Paul, have you thought about this, like using this particular tool? Or I may say, here's a book that I read, this, like we're exchanging those books and resources. Now, if you're in a crew where you could talk about like Robert Greene's new book, 48 Laws of Human Nature, which by the way, I think everybody needs to read on the planet, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Human Nature. If you say that book to somebody that's close to you and they respond with, nah, or nah, I haven't read a book in 5 years, or, nah, that's not my, like, if that's their response,
right?
Think about what that means. Think about what that means to you and how much of an impact that actually makes. I mean, enough people, 5 people in your crew saying, nah, at a certain point, you may say, nah, you know what? I'm not going to read this book. But then think of the reverse of that, right? You've got the 5 Oprahs or 5 Doreens, and she's like, that book is great. Or I haven't read it yet, but I can't wait. Like, it's on my list. Like, let's read it together. Or like, think about the difference there. You just level up when you have people who are like about it and are really out here trying to get it.
Yes. And I will say that it's okay to have sections of people in your life. There are some people that are in my life that I don't drag anymore. I don't try to pull. I don't try to want it more for them than they want it for themselves. Those aren't the people I'm talking about the 48 Laws of Human Nature with. Those are the people I can check in with, and maybe, family, friends, things like that. And we can have a moment of connecting in that way. But my mission, my drive, 90% of my time is spent with people who are really mission focused, whatever that mission is for them, and cannot just be a resource and an encourager, but be someone who can contribute, and I can contribute to them as well. And for some people, this is a really hard conversation to have, because not only maybe you need to change circles a little bit, but you might be that person that hasn't read a book in 5 years. You might be listening to this podcast going, man, I've had this vision board for 5 years, or I've had these goals, and I see now that I haven't really committed myself to doing these things to help me get there. I'm not learning. I'm not surrounding myself with people who are at that place that I'm trying to get to. And man, this is a wake-up call for me.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So 2 is, surround yourself with folks who are going to get it. And then 3 for me is these people who are at the top of their game, the most successful, is they make bold moves. They have bold vision. In Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, he talks about BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. Mm-hmm. People who are ultra successful, what they have is they have substantial belief in themselves, and the belief gives them the ability to dream big and have big vision. And you know what's interesting is you don't necessarily have to deliver on your vision, but just having the vision, walking towards the vision will get you somewhere. Like you think about, going back once again, I'm Jamaican, so I love everything Jamaican. So Marcus Garvey, right? A son of Jamaica. Marcus Garvey, he was like, look, he came over here to Harlem. He was like, look, we actually all need to be in Africa. Like we all need to be united in Africa. And this guy goes and raises money to do what? To buy a freaking ship. Like at that time in the 1930s, a black man buying a ship and using stock and equity to buy a ship. And he didn't just do it once, he did it multiple times. That's unheard of. Like that is a wild, wild vision. And was he successful in getting us all back? No. But the vision cemented his brilliance and cemented his legacy. You think about people like Maggie Walker, who a lot of people don't talk about, from Richmond, because I lived in Richmond for a little while. First black woman to basically become president and to be a majority shareholder of a bank, in the 1930s, like late 1920s. It was her vision to do that, right? That's unheard of at that time for somebody to do it. You think about Reginald Lewis in the 1990s with what he did. Like, it's just, you have to have an incredible vision and you have to walk towards that vision. You have to believe in that vision. And it's okay if you don't reach, the mountaintop, but as long as you feel like you are on your way, you are going to create, immense change, create incredible impact. And then you're going to do, we were talking about earlier with Swiss Beats, you're going to make history.
Right. And for those people who are listening and they're going, oh my gosh, my mind has just been blown. I want to be a history maker. I want to make history. And then they kind of back up to where they are now. And maybe some of them feel like I'm barely treading water, right? And I want to make history. Or I'm facing some situation and circumstances right now where I just, history is opened up for me, but how do I even get started? If I am behind the 8 ball, or if I have made some choices, made some decisions that didn't serve me, and now I'm moving and shifting to this place where I want to make history, what are those initial steps that people need to take?
Well, they've already taken the first major step, and that is they're investing in themselves by just listening to your podcast, Doreen. And I'm saying that like with all the respect in the world, like you are making the right step, because most people are not even making that step. Most people are just saying, it can't happen to me. I'll never make history. So you're doing the right thing, because you need to have podcasts and books and all of this information, because that's what basically inspires you, right? That's fuel for you. But then once you have that fuel built up, you have to expend that energy. And that means that you have to actually take practical steps. And you don't have to feel like you have to do 5 things at once. Just do one thing. So maybe that one thing means, okay, what I'm going to do now that I'm inspired, is what I'm going to do is I'm going to go now volunteer, or I'm going to become an intern for someone in an industry that I want to work in. Or I'm going to now take a course, or I'm going to now start, building this product or building this service or whatever it may be. But you are going to actually take action, because we're most of us are stopped in just the belief, But then the other large amount of us is stopped in the action. And then I'll tell you where the other third of us is stopped. And this is where we normally end, is that we hit an obstacle, we hit a roadblock, right? You try to create the product and nobody buys it. Or you try to join the class and they don't accept you. Or you try to become the intern and they say, no, thank you. And then we normally just stop. That is where you cannot stop. You can never stop, right? Diddy said it best, like, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. You have to keep going. You have to figure out a way to go around, to go over, to go under, to just wait for a second, then move forward. You can't stop. And what I guarantee is that if you keep those three, if you keep filling yourselves up with podcasts like this to get inspired, two is you keep stepping forward, right? Whatever the action is you're stepping forward. And then three, whenever you meet the roadblock, you say to yourself, this is only temporary. I will figure out a way around. If you keep those three things, your life will change. It's inevitable. It's inevitable that your life will change.
Yes. Well, I know, Paul, that you are an avid reader. We both are. And you always have such great resources for people to tap into. I mean, you've already shared and talked about the 48 laws of human nature. We've talked about the standard that should be in everybody's library, good to great. If you could recommend, because reading is, and I say reading, but whether it's audiobooks or however you get it, taking in this type of information is life-changing when it comes to your mindset, when it comes to your belief, when it comes to taking action, when it comes to dealing with barriers and overcoming challenges. And so if you could share a couple of your favorite resources with our listeners, what would they be?
Definitely. Well, one is just to underscore the one that you just mentioned, or I'm not sure if actually I did. Yeah, we did talk about this, I think, is this Robert Greene book. It just came out. And it's the 48 Laws of Human Nature. It's a must read. It's one of those books where I'm going to make, my boys are only 4 and 7, but I'm going to make them read. So that's one. Another, maybe I'll give two more of what I consider top. So one would be Willpower by, Roy Baumeister. Willpower by Roy Baumeister. And the reason why this is such an important read is that if you don't have willpower, you can't achieve anything. You just can't. You cannot achieve anything without willpower. And the beauty behind willpower is that it's like a muscle. It can be built if you don't have it. And Roy Baumeister talks about that. The other reason why I love this book, Willpower, is because, almost all the books that I read about mindset or about rational thinking or irrational thinking or even marketing, almost all of them will cite Roy Baumeister and Willpower. So I say, go to the source and read the source, which is Willpower by Roy Baumeister. The next one I'd say is probably, there's so many good ones, but probably The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg.
Yeah.
The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And the reason why I love that book is because once you have the willpower, then what you need to do is you have to create these positive habits that help you to do whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? It's kind of like you're working out. You first, if you want to, let's say, you want to, you want to lose weight, right? First, you've got to have the willpower to put you into a position to get into the gym or to change your diet, right? Or get to the doctor. That's the willpower. But then once you get into the doctor, you get to the gym, then what are you doing, right? You need the habit to then eat positively or to work out, to wake up every morning and work out at 6 a.m. or whatever it may be.
Right.
How do you get that habit? The habit just doesn't happen. There's a science, there's an art to creating positive habits in our life. Charles Duhigg does a great job at explaining how to create those habits. And so if you've got the habit and you've got the willpower, you're on your way to crushing it. So those two books plus Robert Greene will set you in the right place.
Right.
in the right place. Yes.
Oh, Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Paul, for hanging out with me on this podcast today. How can people find you, connect with you, follow you? Where are you on this internet world?
I am at Paul C. Brunson, PaulCBrunson, on every platform. And I'm learning on social now to post differently on every platform. So if you want to hear me talk about business, that's LinkedIn. If you want to hear me gossip about politics, that's Twitter. If you want to probably not see me show up at all because I don't anymore on Facebook, that's Facebook.
Right.
On Instagram, if you want to see all the craziness in my life and running around the world and with my boys and my wife, that definitely is Instagram.
Yes. Well, I hope that you guys have taken in as much as I have from Paul about what it means to create that self-defined success. Paul, there are so many things that we have not even touched upon when it comes to the things that you have going on around building successful businesses, about communication, about education. And so hopefully at some point we can have a part 2 to this.
Yes.
But I so appreciate you. You are someone who always inspires me every time we have a conversation and drives me to stay the course and continue to bring my history-making vision to reality. And so any last words of advice for our listeners?
I would say only, Doreen, I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
Keep doing it. I see everything you're doing, and you are already making history. And with all of the plans and vision that you have, you will undoubtedly make history. So just keep going. Thank you for the podcast, for providing this platform for your community to learn, for the people you bring on to learn from you and to share. So that's all I have to say at the end is thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you so much, and I will talk with you soon. Didn't I tell you that this conversation would be amazing? And so I am going to give you a call to action, as they say. I'm going to challenge you to go out and get at least one of these books, one of these resources that he's recommended. And not only am I going to challenge you to get the resource, I'm going to challenge you to read the resource in the next 30 days. In the next 30 days, whichever book you choose, to go out, get that book, read the book, and then use the book. Use the content inside of the book. You should be dog-earing, highlighting, taking notes, putting a plan together, shifting your behavior, changing your mindset. That's the value of this conversation, and that's the value of investing in yourself by choosing one of these resources to get started with. And so, as always, I want to hear from you. What has been your biggest takeaway, your biggest aha, the biggest revelation that you've had from this conversation today? Absolutely. Please leave a comment. You can leave a comment down below. You can also share your biggest ahas and takeaways on Twitter. I am at Doreen Rainey. And I would love to know how this particular conversation, this specific time that I spent with Paul and we shared these insights with you, I want to know specifically what your big takeaway is. And so thank you so much for tuning in. If you want more of Paul, you can jump on over to our Radical Success Inner Circle for some additional interviews and content. And until next time, stay radical. Thanks for listening to the Radical Success Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Be sure to head over to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Until next time, stay radical.